Well, hello and welcome to our podcast, Femme Noir. I'm Serena.
I'm Victoria.
And today we are talking about the movie The Half of It on Netflix.
The Half of It, which came out in 2020, is written and directed by Alice Wu. The film stars Leah Lewis as the shy, bookish Ellie Chu, who is hired by the sweet but inarticulate jock Paul, played by Daniel Deemer, who needs help wooing the most popular girl in school, Aster, played by Alexis Lemire. Their new unlikely friendship gets tricky when Ellie discovers she has feelings for the same girl. So as always, we'll start with first impressions based on the trailer. Then we'll go into more in-depth analysis. We'll end up talking about how this film relates when looked through the scope of the Bechtle Test. Serena is going to read some tweets made by the creator that really showcase the feelings, emotions, and thoughts that went into making this film. More behind the scenes. We'll have an FMF, the Fuck, Marry, Friend Zone, as always. And then we'll end with recommendations for you guys if you like this film.
Yeah, I think as far as first impressions go, like when I first watched it, I absolutely loved it. I'm pretty sure I watched it with both of my siblings one night, and then the very next night I watched it again with my friends, and I was just like, it's so good.
This film was like the old guard where it just appeared. I didn't hear anything about it, and then one day it was just there, and then everyone was talking about it, so I was like, okay, I guess I'll watch it. It was really cute though. Yeah. It was really good. I liked it. I'm not into rom-coms. We've established that, so I was just like, okay, it's good, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about that because it's like, it was marketed as kind of like a rom-com type movie, but then watching it, it had, I don't know, a lot more meaning, and it was more like coming of age, but it wasn't just like a coming out story, because we get a lot of those kinds of films where it's just like girl in high school or guy in high school realizes they're gay and it's a coming out story, also coming of age story. But I like that this one, it focused on a different type of love. So it was still very much representative of like everyone in the film and like human emotion and feelings and everything. While at the same time, it added a lot more depth, I think. And I don't know, I personally was more interested in it just because it did focus on different aspects of love. I want to say that, like me being an asexual, I always get a little excited when there's films that talk about love and caring deeply about people in a non-romantic way. So I always kind of hold like a special place for those kinds of movies. So I might be a little biased, a little bit, just in my heart, because I really appreciated what this film did and that it was really about like friendship and becoming like yourself. While still exploring ideas of just love in general without it being any type of like relationship or relationship advice. Like it was really interesting in that way to me.
Right. It is weird because I would say that this is a rom-com. I think just because of the cliches and the situations that played out. But yeah, her relationship with the main love interest, Aster, it kind of takes the back seat. It's not really the main, it is the main plot, but it also kind of isn't. By the end of the movie, there isn't really that much development. I feel they don't really go from like, typically I think there's sort of like a major like boundary that's crossed, whether it's they are they hate each other and then they end up loving each other. There's a larger gap between that, but they never really have that sort of obstacle to cross.
It's a much more complicated relationship between like everyone in the film. It's not just like that black and white, like, oh, this is who you're supposed to fall in love with, this is who you're supposed to not like. Like it's way more convoluted and like complex.
It is really convoluted and
complex on screen.
I remember the first time we had talked about this movie, I brought up how I thought it was so weird that Aster was cheating on her boyfriend, like double cheating, because first she goes out with Paul and then kisses Ellie Chu, and then it's like, and there's no articulation on that. I thought that was really strange, because I guess that was my own that's my own fault for being under the assumption that it's a rom-com, because typically those sorts of actions would have like related consequences. They never really explain why she was okay. Like she was a very Christian girl, and then here she has like a lot going on. Yeah. So it's like, that was weird to me. First watch, that was weird. I picked up on that.
Yeah, like I've seen it now a couple of times. I want to say like 3 or 4 maybe times. And when I was rewatching it the most recent time, I kind of picked up on that character like more than I had the past couple of times I watched it. Like I definitely had always been like, oh, they did such a great job with like Ellie and with Paul and bringing in all of these types of like, you know, different things about them. And I was always like, oh, this is super cool. I love how they did that. I love this about it. I love how they talk to each other, blah, blah, blah. Then this time I watched it, it was similar because I knew you had said that and I was watching for it and I was like, they really didn't do any of that. But it's interesting because the film is also, they have this thing going on, Ellie and Aster, about like being bold and making your boldest stroke and, you know, like doing things and making choices for yourself. And so it's really interesting to see that like through the whole film, Ellie doesn't really make a big choice for herself until the very end when she decides to kiss Aster. But the whole time, Aster is making all of these choices for herself, like communicating with Paul, having this like emotional affair, and like going on dates with him because she 100% knows that whatever she's doing with the other guy, I don't even remember his name.
Oh yeah,
just watched it. But whatever she's doing with that guy is not what she wants. It's what she imagines or assumes is just what she has to accept.
Yeah.
And so it's like kind of the first time for her to also make these choices for herself.
Yeah,
and it's
true.
so much more interesting to watch from that standpoint of like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, like she's this Christian girl. She talks to Ellie about like religion and life and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting to see all of these perspectives interact in a film, especially with Ellie. And she's like, I don't believe in all of that stuff. And then like Paul, who's like, yeah, I was raised this way, but he's just like a sweetheart. Like an
cute.
Absolute sweetheart. And I don't know, I really enjoyed the film. I think because of the complexities of it, it's not just a cut and dry, basic movie. Like you can't predict what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The way that they did comedy was a little different. Like they still have the comedic bits, but sometimes they really just let something really deep sit there.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would be talking and then she'd be like, oh, okay, well, I think it's dumb. Like after this super large like conversation and concept that they're talking about, and then it would just be like a moment of silence for the audience, just kind of sit in it instead of just going immediately into like a comedic like payoff or something, which I really enjoyed about it. The pacing and the cadence of the film was really nice and consistent throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I like that. I like what you just said about how it was a rom-com with like, or not that it was a rom-com, but that it showcased different romances. Because I think I got a lot of that impression that it was a rom-com from her behavior with Paul, Ellie and Paul's relationship, but they weren't a romantic couple. But they kind of have that, like everything that you would expect from a rom-com couple, they have that like building of a relationship, but they end up being just friends. So that's really cute, and that's something I never picked up on before until you literally just said that. I think that's where I got that impression.
I love it. I love to see it.
Because it kind of was like, and they kind of crossed that threshold from like they weren't necessarily enemies, but they weren't in the same social sphere at all, and she was very like averted to him, like did not want to be associated with him, and then they end up becoming like, you know, she cries on the train as she leaves him. Yeah, I love that scene. It's so good. It's so good because
like,
she hated it.
I like the idea of like the great romantic gesture, but it's completely just out of a deep care for a person, and it's not necessarily romantic. It's just a deep gesture of love, and it's done so well in this film. Yeah, I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
and really
it was between platonic individuals, which is really sweet. Because I wasn't really like interested at all in like Aster and her. It was not. It didn't have the development that her and that Ellie and Paul's relationship had. which is really sweet.
Yeah. I like how throughout the movie they have these like quotes in it that pop up on the screen.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about them, but I think they're super interesting because it also changes throughout the film. And I kind of love how it goes from being this really serious, like, look at love and life. And it very much mirrors the film as it goes through, like, parallels the film, because it starts off with these super intense quotes about life and love and from, like, classical artists and writers and stuff like that. And then as you get further along in it, eventually there's one scene where they actually quote Ellie in the like thing, that the quote on the screen as like the transition, and then the very end, right before the train, it's just emojis.
Yeah.
And it says like
cute.
various sources, and it's just like the cutest thing because it kind of, the film like stops taking itself so seriously and is like, yes, this is an ending everybody deserves.
That's so cute.
And it's just beautiful.
Yeah, that motif of art was really nice. I wrote down that the first scene taking place in the music room was kind of that like foundation of the like appreciation and the way that art was integral to the characters, like versus having the establishing scene like in a cafeteria or like outside the school or something random. Then it really like, it kind of draws a line between those characters, like that commonality of art and that like deeper connection and deeper thinking that they may have like a deeper appreciation for each other. And then that came through
it really
in, like,
does
the
carry
painting.
through.
Yeah.
I think even you just saying that reminded me even of like just the relationship that Ellie has with her dad and how they're always watching films together. And I 100% think that film is a form of art. So like, I don't think I ever really thought that hard about it until you just said like the motif of art. Because there's like the painting and like the books and like the writers and the concepts and everything. But then there's also like the film that like, it's almost like every point or every relationship she has like some type of art form that they do together or something like that. Now that you mention it.
That. I never even thought of that. I like that.
Because, like, with Aster, even when she's ghostwriting for what's-his-face.
Paul.
I mean, not only is she writing, but she's using her, like, I guess, knowledge of writers, and she's taking, like, all these challenges of, like, okay, well, I challenge you to this intellectual artist or whatever. And then eventually they drop the, like, intellectual artist and they go straight to the graffiti. And they start graffitiing and they're like, what's your boldest stroke? And then she's like, I was going to be a painter, but I stopped painting. And then she's like, okay. And their whole thing is, like, what is it? She says, it's a quote that Aster says that Ellie ends up quoting back to her in the church after, where Aster's talking about how one of her art teachers said that there's 5 strokes, or maybe it's 3, that make a painting great. And then that it's like the boldest strokes. And so you have to be either, and basically the idea behind it was that it's either you're going to be comfortable having a good painting, or you're going to have to step out of your comfort zone to make these bold strokes to see what could be and like what could be the next big thing. Like your painting might be great after this. And then Ellie combats it with, okay, but if you do that, you also have to make sure that you still have it in you to still make that good painting again. Which I feel like is, it's very interesting to think about just through the film, how that idea carries through. And then in the church, she says love is being willing to make the bold strokes, knowing that you might not ever be able to get back to that good painting. And
like be able to top yourself.
I don't know. Every time I watch this film, when she says that, I'm just like, oh, gut punch. Like, oh,
is it like,
so good.
It means like you have to be willing to do it even though you may not ever like be that good again? Or how do you interpret it?
Yeah, like whatever you have, you might ruin it, but love is like the striving for it. She says that too to someone else, like in her big monologue, and it's just like, that's accurate. It might never be what it once was, but it could also be the greatest thing ever.
I know,
so
and
scary.
I like because it has such a profound like message, and like you said, like it can be like the way it can be interpreted and things she said. But it seems very simple visually and then narratively. It's just these high schoolers, and there's I feel like to me there's very few sets. Maybe there actually was like many, but there's in terms of like places, there was like the school, her house. Briefly Paul's house, the church. It wasn't something like that required, like Grand Central Station or something, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, like it wasn't
chase scene
huge.
to the airport.
It
was very like small and condensed, and like I felt that they like built that imaginary city so it was like we were like, witnessing these little like dolls, like, in this like tiny little city, like in their own like I want to say like capsule, but like what would be a better word? Not a capsule, but like
I don't know.
Witnessing them. Hold on. Don't.
I was gonna say set again, and then I was like, we already said that word.
I know. Cut that out. Cut this out. I'm gonna look up at the source. So they built that fictional city so believably. It's like witnessing these characters as real people in like such a concise and that's not a good word. I hate that word.
Like realistic way, I guess.
Like, what do I want to say? Like condensed, but that's not the word. An ad popped up. Okay, anyway. It's like witnessing like these people live out a world, but at the same time, we kind of talked about like that whole fantasy versus reality in the Promising Young Woman one. And I feel like this one did a good job of like keeping that separation between reality and fantasy. Like we can, as an audience, indulge in this fantasy and at the same time understand it as like its own
separate
I'm gonna
world.
go insane. I'm gonna go insane. You have to hold on because I know that there's a word. I'm gonna go fucking insane. Okay, like in its own enclosed environment. That only took me 15 minutes. But yeah, because it's like I feel like at the end, I mean, maybe other people interpreted it differently, but it really felt like an ending. I really didn't feel like it was open-ended. It felt like the story ended there,
Yeah, it did feel like a nice little moment in time that you kind of just get to experience.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily need to keep like experiencing it. Like you got exactly what you needed from it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of elements and themes about this movie that are interesting because even the beginning, like if we continue talking about the idea of art, like it starts off with that little animation of Ellie kind of talking about like how humans, when we were born, there's legends that say that we had 4 arms and 4 legs and a head with 2 faces, and then the gods thought that we were so happy that they wouldn't be able to control us anymore, so they cut us in half and we spend the rest of our lives looking for our soulmate. And so I thought that was such an interesting idea as well, like the idea of a soulmate, to bring into the story about high schoolers that end up kind of being each other's soulmate without it being necessarily like a romantic thing, because you see that a lot in films where everyone's like, oh, I found my soulmate, or something you hear at weddings all the time. Like, you're my soulmate. And I'm like, oh, crazy. No way. Of course they are.
Do you believe in soulmates?
This film almost like challenges it. And I do appreciate that as well.
So you don't believe in soulmates?
I feel like, what were you saying?
You don't believe in soulmates?
No, I do. It's just like the whole thing where like everyone just assumes that their romantic partner is their soulmate.
Oh, because then you don't believe that, is what I'm saying.
I don't necessarily think that it has to be between romantic attraction or romantic partners. Like I 100% believe that like maybe your friends can be like your soulmate, or like your soulmate could be like a mentor or something like that. Like it doesn't have to be a romantic gesture or some like romantic thing that brings you together to be soulmates. Like it can completely be just like a deep understanding or connection.
This is like, this is so off topic, but this is just so interesting. So like you feel like if you are ever dating somebody that like, if even though they're not your soulmate, you're like, that's fine, like whatever.
Yeah.
That's cool. That makes sense.
Yep.
I would agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I don't think soulmates are real. But I would say that like, I feel like more confident between like my like friendships and stuff. Like that is probably the closest to soulmate that it gets, you know?
Yeah, like some people are like, oh, I married my best friend. I'm like, that's super cool. Like, I don't know if I'd want to marry my best friend. I don't know yet. Maybe this will just end up
But
being...
if they say yes...
This is just going to be a podcast about love.
No, wait. Yeah,
Let's
I think we're talking about movies. Can we talk about something interesting?
Oh, the Pisces energy in the room right now.
Girl, the energy has been very, like, Valentine's Day. I'm not trying to, like, you know...
Is this coming out near Valentine's Day, this episode? I feel like it might be.
I think it's coming out in March.
Valentine's Day episode where we just talk about our ideas
about
love. We have no answers for you. We're just ruminating.
Yeah.
I'm wearing red because it's Valentine's Day.
I'm wearing green because I
look like
yet.
A pirate. Like a smudgy
I literally
pirate.
don't think you look like a pirate at all. I don't know how you came up with that.
I think it's because I feel like my eyes look kind of puffy and they're like a little bit like I took a nap on my face and like I didn't bother redoing my eye makeup, and so my my mascara is like a bit smudgy, and I'm just wearing this nice red collared shirt.
No, it's
it always gives me pirate vibes. Anyway, back to love. I'm just kidding. I have nothing to add here.
I know. Fuck the movie.
I'm kind of embarrassed now. I don't want to keep talking.
Keep talking about what?
Love.
I want to talk about it more, though.
Okay, Victoria, just for you.
Oh my god.
Because I love you.
What?
So it's because I love you.
Oh my god. Oh. We got that on Candid Cam. No takesies, backsies. Cheers
to that. We'll keep it in. I'll keep it in just for you. Happy Valentine's Day.
I'll drink to that. So what do you think the closest you've ever gotten to a soulmate would be? And do you think if you haven't that you will?
I think the closest I've gotten to that actually is with my friendships right now. Like I think
like many friends.
Yeah, like between them all, I feel like as a group, I feel like, I guess complete, I guess. Like I don't really need to go outside of like that to feel anything. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I do feel very complete by myself, but I spent a really long time like thinking about friendships and trying to understand friendships, because a part of this was like growing up military and stuff where being friends with people was really hard because I was constantly moving. So I definitely, after high school, took just like a couple of years to just figure out what the heck friendship is and like how to be a good friend, because I had no idea. Mm-hmm. And so now I feel like I'm at a good point in my life where I'm just like, okay, I get it. Like, I totally understand. Like, I would always see these like movies where it was like, oh, like we're best friends and blah, blah, blah. And I like never understood. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, I get it. I totally understand. Like Blair, Serena, like they're best friends. Like,
wait, what?
You know, like Blair? All of the Blair and Serena from Gossip Girl. It's not a movie.
I've never seen it.
I only watched it because she has the same name as me, and I wanted to know, like...
I was like, who's Blair? Who?
That was literally my only reason for watching it. But yeah, the whole, I guess, like, iconic friendships type thing, like, I never understood it, but I think I'm at a place right now, luckily, in my early 20s, to be like, yeah, like, I have definitely cultivated at this moment in time friendships that I feel very confident in, and that like I truly do like love my friends. And like I've had to think about that for like a really long time.
Really?
Yeah. That's like I don't know. It's one of those things like for me, like I never really understood it, which sounds horrible. Like, but yeah, like I guess like now I'm in that kind of like point in time.
Yeah.
And I think like it comes for everyone at different times. Like I don't necessarily have like childhood friends that I was ever really close with, but these friends now, like we may not have been friends for a very long time, but we've definitely grown in our friendships with each other and like come into our own by being around each other. And I think that's like a really important thing for friendships. Yeah.
Wow. So it was like at a point, because you said you like had to think about it. It was like at a point where it was so good that you had to think about it, or you like second guessed yourself so you had to think about it or something like that?
Basically, after high school, I kind of just realized I was like, wow, I really don't have any like friends. I was like I had friends like in high school. Like it wasn't just like I had people to eat with and people that I had inside jokes with and people that like if I saw nowadays, like I would totally be like, yes, like totally like click with them probably and like, you know, just pick right back up like wherever we left off kind of a thing. But it was a little different than being like, I 100% could probably move across the world and we would still have time and the energy to figure out how to keep being friends, if that makes sense.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Because it's really hard to do that. Like I've tried it so many times, but there's only a few people really where it like works.
Wow.
Like even you right now, like you don't live anywhere near me. Like,
I'm 500 miles away.
But like we still see each other like at least twice a week.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is super interesting. And so I think after having these friends for a while, I just kind of like it just kind of clicked and I was like, holy crap, I've only been friends with them for this long, but it feels like forever, you know? And I was like, that's kind of how I knew. I was like, yeah, I definitely have good friends right now. And I love them.
That's so sweet. Yeah, that kind of trust is hard to have and reciprocate. So that's really good that you guys have that, like a really healthy, like, communication of that.
Well, I hope we do. At least I feel like I do.
Yeah, no, I think that's great and that's awesome and I would agree. I think so too. Just from the stuff that you tell me. I think that you definitely do. That's so cute and beautiful. Oh my God.
You're about to cry.
What happened?
I said, are you about to cry?
I'm not, but we might get there.
We might get there, especially when I read the author's notes about her feelings of like this movie and stuff. It's so beautiful what she writes. And I think, I guess going back to the movie, like what really brings this movie through is the writing and the exploration of like human nature and friendships and relationships and all of that kind of stuff that really kind of like ties this movie together. Like there's some shots that are like really pretty, but overall, like you were saying, it's a pretty simple film, but the writing of it is just so good that like you can just keep watching it over and over again and you don't even mind like if it's the most beautiful shot you've seen. Like you don't really notice it too much because you're way more invested in the characters, and I think that's a really good sign of even just like the writing of a movie, because I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, I really like this movie and it's like the most boring movie ever. And you're just like, why do you like it? And they're like, it's so pretty.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. But I feel like when you have a movie that's just so well written, like honestly, like it could probably be picked up and made by anybody and still be amazing as a movie, just because the script and the writing of it was so good.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I've had this like argument, or I've had arguments with people just because like they'll do exactly what you said. They'll be like, oh my God, this movie's so good. And I watch it and I'm like, actually there was like a bunch of plot holes. It was really this and that and everywhere. But they're like, but the music. And I'm like,
They're like the soundtrack.
Yeah, and I'm like,
they pick that one thing, they fixate on it.
Yeah, I think everyone has like a different thing. So like for some people, their thing is like everything can be shit, but if the music's good, it's a good movie. Like everything can be like everything can be shit, but if the acting's good, it's a good movie. For me, everything could be shit, but if the story's good, it's a good movie.
Yeah. For me, it has to be about the story. If the story is good, then I'm gonna be like, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
Like
same.
Yeah,
it could be low budget.
Like you can't ignore everything else.
Yeah,
it's similar to like what I learned when you take a sound editing class. They basically teach you they're like anything that you see on screen is going to be something that you're going to want to make a sound out of. And basically, what they tell you is that like if your audience can pick up on like a mistake, then you're not doing it right. But if the audience has no idea and they don't even notice, then you know you're doing it really, really well.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's the same with movies where it's like the story's super good. Like you shouldn't have to think too hard about it. It's going to just impact you and you're not even going to realize it until the movie's over.
Yeah.
And I think that really is like the staple of a good movie.
I think like when movies use like texting, it's typically corny. I'm just not a fan of it. I guess
that's true.
Yeah.
I don't like most times when they like I like that they started off with like letters and then obviously because it's like a real life movie and it's supposed to like imitate life, they had to text.
Yeah.
And then like the emoji part where they're like send emojis, like don't send emojis, and I was like it was funny and it was cute, but I also hated how they sent like I was like, what the heck's caterpillar with glasses? Like, does that emoji even exist?
I know. And then, like you said, it came back to be, like, not important, but they had that little ending screen sort of thing. So it kind of was,
like, it was at least meaningful to, like, their relationship.
Yeah.
Like, it was cute to kind of be in on that inside joke.
Yeah. But then I'm like, I don't know. When movies do that, I'm like, if you can't, like, I don't know. I don't know why I'm like this because, like, I was born in 97. Like, I grew up in the age of, like, phones and iPhones and texting. So I don't know why, like, when I see it in movies, it's, like, corny. I'm like, you should be able to do it without the texting. And especially since it's, like, specifically iMessage texting. Like, I don't mind phones. Like, they can call and like that would be cool, but
yeah, like when they're on a phone call or like like even when they FaceTime, it's a little weird.
Yes. Like, why is that weird? I don't like to see it in a movie. I want to say it has
something to do with the fact that they can't be like, this is like a phone and like the brand, like if I were to hold up like an Apple phone, they wouldn't be able to like use it in the shot unless they were sponsored by Apple. So they'd have to like make up a whole thing. And I'm like, maybe that's what it is, but it does feel, it's always like really weird because it's like, it's very obvious that they're never actually like, this is a very nitpicky thing, but I don't know why they never just screen record on an iPhone and superimpose it into the iPhone when they use an iPhone. They always take the actual video and then they shrink it and like superimpose it into the iPhone or like the iPhone image. And they like try to reenact like iPhone like footage or whatever. Like, they'll hold like a freaking black magic camera up to their face so that it looks, air quotes, looks like an iPhone shot, and they'll like have them hold it or like they'll be like shaky or whatever. And I'm like, you could just use an iPhone.
Well, iPhones are good now. I can see why they maybe wouldn't just because of resolution.
Yeah,
it'd be crunchy on a freaking like movie screen. But now iPhones are getting better.
Yeah,
so
like nowadays you may as well just use the iPhone.
Yeah,
like,
now you could.
Like, not for the whole movie, obviously, but if it's going to be an iPhone shot or something that's supposed to look like it, I feel like even for the actors, that might even just be better. Like, use your resources, I guess. Like, you're spending so much money on this, like, black camera, on this black magic camera or something, or, like, the Red or something like that. Or, like, some Sony, like, the brand new one with a stabilizer and, like, a super big rig. And I'm like, they literally could just, like, screen record a conversation on FaceTime between the actors, and it would probably feel better for the audience than it does when they use those giant cameras.
Yeah, I wonder if that's what they did. Did you ever watch American Vandal? I think that's what they did in that one. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, they do it so like realistic. That. They do it all the time.
Yeah.
Or when they have like a FaceTime on the computer and then they like shrink the screen and they like try to edit it to look like a computer screen. I'm like, just stop.
I know, it's corny. But that whole scene where Ellie's in the car Paul's on the date with Aster and they're all texting. I don't know. I'm just not into that.
Oh yeah, and they're
it
like
makes it
texting
seem
back
like,
and forth.
I don't know why
There was one thing about that, because every time something like that happens, they kind of do tune out. Or like the way that like they have teenagers text is never the way that teenagers actually text.
It brings me
which
out
is
of the
also
movie
why it's
for
like clunky
sure.
and awkward.
I'm like, I'm suddenly so hyper aware of the fact that I'm watching a movie and that it's like getting corny.
It takes you out of it a little bit because you're just like,
why.
that's not how we text at all. That's not how people text.
It's weird.
But the one thing I did like about that was like they did this cool editing thing where she sent like a risky text and then it popped up on the screen, right? And then it has this sound effect that's just like a door knocking, like a and then it like kind of holds the silence for a little bit. And then it shows you like the waiting lines. So they were able to like add suspense to it that way, which you don't see often. They kind of just like either zoom in or make it look like a text screen, even though it's obviously not a text screen and stuff like that. So I did appreciate that a little bit where it like went back and forth because the framing of the shot was really cool. And then they had it come up in like the corners and then they added like the sound effect. But yeah,
maybe because it's like we're watching a movie, right? So I want to be like visually stimulated. I don't want to watch people on their phones.
I don't want to watch people texting.
Yeah, I don't want you can't make that interesting. It's going to be boring.
Yeah, like they may as well just be having a conversation.
Yeah, like you're making it up. Like make them talk, you know?
Or like even if it's a letter, like you can
that's interesting because they're doing something.
Or see something like that and like you can make that look interesting with cinematography and like framing and, pans and slow movements, but you can't really do that with a text. It's really boring. Like even when they're doing that typing thing
it's not
and they have it like come across the screen, like I actually hate that because that's not what a text looks like when you get it.
I know. It's like I'm on my phone 24/7. I don't want to watch a movie and then they're on their phone. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know why it's such a weird thing, but whenever it happens in a movie, I'm like, fuck, this again.
I know, like I always appreciate it when they actually take the time to like write letters or something, even though like most people are like, oh, that's super quirky or whatever. They're like, that's not realistic. We would just send a text or like call someone on the phone. But I'm like, that literally just
I'm like, everything about the movie is fake. Let it be fake. Like, why does it have to be realistic? It doesn't. It's all fake. Like, it's all made up.
Like it's odd. I don't know. Because they're like movies will always get those like bad raps for things that they're like, oh, why did they just like skip to that part? And it's like because you don't want to see what comes in between.
Exactly.
No one wants to see what comes in between. Like like those like, oh my goodness, when they're like getting ready for the day and they're like, why don't we see them take a poop? And you're like, do you want to see them take a poop? It's not interesting.
No, it's
like
true.
Why? Like we know they're pooping. Come on. Like, unless it's a comedy, it makes no sense to see someone pooping on screen. Like, if it's a coming-of-age movie and it's like I'm getting ready for prom and the girl's, like, taking a shit. And you're just like, we know funny. She's doing that. If it was a comedy, but if it's like she just had her heart broken and now she's getting dressed to go to prom all by herself and get, like, no. I'm not going to want to watch her sitting on the toilet.
That's fucking funny. That would be funny.
But now that I've said that, I'm definitely going to write that into a comedy.
I was just thinking that. I was like, wait a second. I'm going to do it. I'm going to shatter the glass ceiling of having the first girl poop in a
Victoria,
movie.
write this down for our
for our
next film we make.
Coming soon. Everyone's going to want to see it.
We do have to incorporate this.
But that is something too, like, this is not even movies, but when I would read books, I remember just always being pissed when they would mention that a girl was on her period. That happened, like, a lot. When I was like, huh? Like, and it wouldn't have anything to do with the plot. They'd be like, oh, like, okay. I'm on my period. And it'd be like, she went to the bathroom and put on a pad and shit. I'm like, bitch, who cares? Like, what the fuck? It's, like, the weirdest thing. It's, like, that unnecessary shit. I'm like, who, okay. Like, I could have just, it doesn't matter. It's like, okay, so then anytime you don't mention it, she's not, like, bitch, it was not important at all, and that shit was weird. So it's like, that,
like, oh, so she was only on her period one time in the span of 4 years.
Dude, it's like,
that girl needs to go to a doctor.
Dude, I know. I don't even know. Yeah, it's the little things that I'm like, I don't know, that I've always just fixated on. To get back on track.
What were we even talking about? Is there anything else you would mention about the movie? Because I mean, I feel like I could go in depth about like all the characters and everything and how much I love them and how precious Paul is. But I honestly feel like you should just watch the movie. Like if you haven't watched it already, like you should just watch it and appreciate it. Like I don't want to ruin it for you, so I don't want to talk too much about it if you haven't seen it. But even if you have seen it, like you totally know what I'm talking about. Like if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And I feel like if I keep talking about it, it's just gonna like not be as, I don't know, precious or impactful. Like how many times, how many other ways can I just say that this himbo is like the perfect himbo?
He's so cute.
Like he's super respectful of literally everyone in this film. And so nice. Like, and then he's also like, he's a jock. He's kind of dumb. And I really like the trope that they play throughout the whole thing with him trying to run and catch up with Ellie on her bike. That also just, they mentioned one scene where the coaches are like, what the heck got into Paul? And like, he's like running faster than the entire football team. But I really like that they pay that off later with him being the only one on the football team to have scored in like years.
Yeah.
So he becomes like the most famous person in their school.
Yeah, it was so cute.
Like, so precious. I absolutely love that. But I like that he also just got faster and that she never slowed down for him. Like,
I think there was actually, I wrote it down. Let me see what scene it was. There was a scene where it showed that he could go faster if he wanted to, but like slowed down.
He started
to, like,
slowing down.
Yeah. Oh yeah, when I think it was like
cute.
when those guys made fun of her or something and he like chased after them and then he like came back to like jog next to her.
And he's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Do you want to be like pick on someone your own size or something like that?
Yeah.
And he like throws a rock at her. And she's like, what the heck? No one's ever done that for me before.
Yeah. And that's just more rom-com stuff
film.
that I'm like,
yeah,
man.
You're not a fan of, but I think it's adorable.
That was unique and cool. It was like rom-com between friends.
Yeah, it's precious and I love it.
Yeah.
Can we get more of that, please? Like just friends just loving each other? Because I think that should be way more, not... like, it should be shown on screen a lot more than it is, I feel like. Because I feel like you always see these movies about, like, friends and stuff, but then the whole time they're like, girl, I love you, like, you're my favorite, blah, blah, blah. And then they also, like, just, like, there's never any grand gestures between friends. Like, not a lot. Like, sometimes there is. And I think more and more now that we're in this age of film and TV, I would say, that we're in right now, you see it a little bit more. Like, I've definitely seen a couple more television shows come out where there's just, like, grand gestures between friends on television. Not so much in movies, though, and I would really like to see that more.
I definitely think that there's a lot between, like, cishet white men. There's a lot of buddy movies. But they're
true.
Not diverse. You never see.
Yeah, like there's not a lot of diversity.
Yeah.
Like I want to see girls being friends with their girlfriends and just being like, yeah, I love you. Like you're my best friend. Yeah. And I want to see it with like men too. Like I feel like I see a lot of TikTok videos and this is kind of funny because they're like, gotta love on you bros. And it's just like them hugging. And I'm like, that's so precious. And they're just like, yeah, like...
Yeah, what's unfortunate is that is like the bare minimum.
See something like that, like even in buddy films of like hugging your friends, doing like grand gestures for your friends out of like love for each other. Because even in like the buddy films, it's more of like a we're talking about it, but in a different context because we're bros, you know, like we're bros, like no homo type of a thing, and I'm just like, stop it.
Yeah.
like stop it. It's just hug. Okay, no one cares if you hug. Like,
yeah.
Like, just hug it out. Like, you know you want to. Just do it. Like, no one cares.
Yeah.
Like, you need it. You need it so much. You should feel okay to do that. And I feel like a lot of times in media, they make it feel like it's weird to have guys hugging. Or, like, if they do that, they make it, like, a funny thing.
Yeah, like a joke.
I want to say a New Girl, like, with, like, Schmidt and Nick. They have this, like, little scene or bit where they're like, I love you, man. I love you too, man. And they're, like, crying, but they're like, beer, like, stuff like that. And, like, women, boobies, like, something like that. And it's like, why do we have to make it like a funny thing?
Yeah.
Like, can we just make it that, like, I feel like if we generalized it, like, men should show men platonic friendship love just as much as they show love to, like, people they're romantically attracted to.
No, I agree. But that really goes back to, like, what is it? Like, patriarchal standards of, like, holding women to standards. And because there are things that women do, then men shouldn't do those things. And, you know, that's how that
like the whole, like, birthed. Women are emotional and men can't be.
Yeah. And
it's like the moment a man shows emotion, if it's towards a woman, then it's, like, cool. But if it's, like, towards another man, it's not. And it's like, that's the dumbest thing ever.
I know. And it's sad because people think that we're past that, but we're really not. Like how you just said, New Girl is like a really recent show, but that sucks. Like, that's not, like,
it's like, it doesn't have to be like a joke. It can be serious.
Yeah, I can, like,
Okay, I guess since we're talking about, like, men right now, we should just do our FMF.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, and then not to make it weird, because I know that these are all, they're all in high school, but the actors are not in high school. They are older. So it's okay. Yeah. Wait, who the fuck? Oh, the boyfriend's name was Trig. Okay, so it's Wolfgang.
Oh.
I forgot. I was like...
Every time he was on screen, I was triggered. It's okay, you can laugh at that if you're listening. Victoria didn't, but
sorry, I'm in the zone.
I had to take
Okay, so who are we gonna
that one in there.
What happened? What?
I just made a great pun and you didn't even acknowledge it.
I didn't know. I wasn't paying attention. What happened?
Oh man, I gotta say it again. So you can, if you missed it before, you can laugh at it this time. You said his name was Trig, and I said because every time he was on screen, I was just triggered.
Oh, that's terrible. Why did you make me listen to that? You know what?
Not only have they listened to it once, but now they've listened to it twice.
Man. That shit hurted.
Thank you. I'll be here all night.
How about we just do Trig and Paul, and then it's just fucking friend zone?
That's it. I think the answer is obvious.
Well, actually, wait, is it though?
I mean, I would screw Paul and then friend zone Trig.
I would do the opposite. I would friend zone Paul and I would fuck Trig, because I want Paul to be my friend. Like how he's true. Ellie's friend.
Because if I could marry any of them, I would marry Paul.
Same.
Obviously.
Right.
Because precious human being of a cinnamon roll child. Golden retriever type personality. It's perfect. Himbos, we love to see it.
That's funny. Okay, cool. I'm glad we got a couple different answers. 2 different answers on that. There's only 2 options. We got 2 different answers. Didn't plan that.
We can get emo now.
Yeah, I'm ready.
It's sad. Everyone, this is probably going to make Victoria cry, but we were talking earlier about how this movie is just so interesting and complex, and a lot of that is because the writer-director, Alice Wu, just kind of pours her heart into it, and she wrote this director's note that I felt was kind of important to read because it really does sum up, like, the themes of the movie, and, like, if you've only watched it one time maybe and you never gave it a second thought, like, maybe it'll convince you to watch it again. But I think that when directors write things about movies specifically, like, especially when they have, like, this, like, hers is pretty long, and she posted it on Twitter, but, like, when they do stuff like that, I feel like it's always important to read because it's kind of like another insight into the film. Like, obviously something could be made with an intention and you can interpret it like a different way, but I always think that it's really cool to know what the intention is behind art. And so I am, for that reason, going to read her director's note for you guys. Again, this was posted on her Twitter, so like if you Google it, you can find it if you want to like read it later or something, or send it to someone else. But I also don't think we mentioned that obviously the director is a woman, but she's a woman of color and she's also a lesbian. And so this movie was kind of like, she wrote it like kind of just to sort through like her own life. Like she was writing it from her own life. So a lot of it is based in like her own experiences. And so this is what she has to say about it. So she says, "The first time I had my heart broken after coming out as a lesbian was not by a girl, but by a guy. A straight white guy from the heartland, no less. If you had picked this guy out of a crowd and said, 'That boy will be your best friend,' I wouldn't have believed you. But sometimes you meet someone and for whatever reasons, your weird works together. He helped me accept myself as gay at a time when neither of us knew any gays. And the two of us bumbled through the odd terrain of, in quotes, trying to get a girl. He succeeded to our great joy. At least one of us would not die alone. And then disaster. His new girlfriend was wary of us, despite knowing I was gay. And slowly, ineffably, the delicate calculus of our connection eroded. I recall one rainy night, the two of us crying in a car, me blurting, 'I don't get it. If anything were going to happen to us, wouldn't it have already happened?' And he said, 'She's not worried we'll sleep together. She's threatened by our intimacy.' I always remembered that. The half of it didn't start as a movie about teens. I set out to write about 20-somethings best friends, a lesbian and a straight guy trying to understand love while not fully understanding their own connection. And then I hit a wall. I couldn't find an ending, not in 100 pages, that felt both satisfying and earned. Them's the breaks when you try to write from life, and you haven't the faintest idea how to make life work the way you want it to. I didn't know how to keep that love then, and I certainly don't know now. So I threw up my hands and thought I should just set this thing in high school, because only in high school is everything heightened. Every feeling, the first and therefore only time you will ever feel this feeling. And frankly, when it comes to love, don't we all regress to being teenagers? As often happens in my work, at a certain point, my characters took over. A whole Sereno component slipped in, and the film became something else entirely. So here I am, staring down the barrel of midlife, having just made a movie about teenagers. Now that it's done, I can see a few things more clearly. For one, I used to think there was only one way to love, that A plus B minus C equals love. Now that I'm older, I see that there are more. So many more ways to love than I had ever imagined. For another, endings are tricky, because we expect answers. 15 years ago, with my first film, Saving Face, I got one recurring question. Is this ending too happy? At the time, as much as I saw the truth in it for my characters, I confess to not knowing that if happy endings could be expected in real life. But as a queer woman, I needed, to see it in order to believe that it could happen for me. And she has a side note. As a side note, 15 years later, no one ever thinks that ending is too happy. The world changed, and for that I am grateful. She continues, "Now with the half of it, I'm regularly peppered with questions over whether certain characters end up together in ever-pointed crescendo together. But is the ending happy? Ha! My honest answer to that is that the point of the film isn't about who ends up with whom. It's about three people who collide in a moment in time before going their separate ways, each now holding the piece of themselves that allows them to become the person they are meant to be. The end of the film is each of their beginnings, and for my characters, I can think of no happier ending." Which brings me back to the friend who had started me down this path. I wrote the half of it as a way to work through heartbreak of losing that friendship. In retrospect, I might have been solving for the wrong equation. I've always harbored a deep pang over what I could have done differently to keep that friendship, to stave off the heartbreak. But perhaps that was never the point. Heartbreak or not, that friendship helped me become the person I am. Those late nights spent strategizing how to win at love were never about winning or love. They were about two ding-dongs who cared enough about each other to fully see and accept each other. It is the thing I love the most about Ellie and Paul, about Ellie and Aster, and in hindsight, about my friend and me. So on that note, the half of it. And the hope that some of your endings become beginnings. Alice Wu, May 1st, 2020.
Oh my god, it's so sad.
It's such a nice, heartfelt note.
Oh.
And I absolutely, every time I watch this movie, have to go back and read it because I get all of those feelings from this movie. Like, you really feel and can experience just so much of that. Like, everything she said. I think I even said some of those things exactly, like, earlier in this podcast. But yeah, it's an amazing film. And I think that because it comes from such a heartfelt place, like, you can really feel it, which is why I think it really comes through as a movie. But I guess now we can go into the Bechtle test.
Oh man, I gotta like read that what she said like every day. That is like poetry, right? Bro. That shit's beautiful.
So good.
Basically what I wanted to mention, because it does eventually pass, but it's between Ellie and Aster, right?
Technically, I think she has it with her teacher first.
Oh, you're right.
She says that. Okay, she says
you're
that.
So right.
I laugh at this joke every time when she's like, something about like, oh, six different takes on like Sophocles or something like that. And then she's like, just the one. And then she turns in her paper and she's like, oh, but if you didn't write their papers, I'd actually have to read theirs. And then she says something about like, all right, bye. Like, you should go to college or something like that. Like, something snappy. And then she tells the teacher, she's like, try not to get fired this weekend. And then she's like, she says, many may fear God, but you know what God fears? The teachers union.
Oh my God.
Like the end of the scene.
No, you're right.
But she does with Aster, and I think that is a little bit more of an important, like, Bechtle test passing.
Yeah, okay, that's what's interesting, because I forgot about the teacher completely, but you're right, it does pass with the teacher, because then they end up having multiple conversations. Mm-hmm. But I read something, so did you ever watch the show Bojack Horseman on Netflix?
Yeah.
Okay, so
one of the only television shows to have actual asexual representation.
Yeah, and it was like
I
really
always
cool.
bring that up.
Yeah, it was really good. They released like an art book or something, and I saw randomly somebody posted a quote from the art book. I tried to find it before because I was going to reference it, but I can't find it. And I think it was the creator that said this. But he said that he worked, before doing Bojack, he worked as like on a committee that would read over like pilot scripts and like decide which ones that they would, pass on to greenlight. And they would read through them, and there were so many that had women characters as the side characters, with a male character being the protagonist, and the women characters were like solely defined by their relationship to the man. Like, it was just like, his girlfriend, his mom, da-da-da. They were all these characters. And it got to a point where they were like, you know what? If it's like that, we're not even going to finish it. We're just going to throw it away. Because they were like, we don't like that. We want it to be around women, whatever. Anyway, when they got around to finally writing Bojack, they found that all of the characters it just existed in relation to their relationship with Bojack. It was like, Bojack's writer, Diane. Oh, Bojack's ex-girlfriend and manager, da-da-da. And they were like, shit, we're doing the exact same thing that we said that we hated and all this stuff. And it's difficult when you're writing, because then everything does happen to the protagonist. And inherently, when the protagonist is male, then all of these women are accessories to that main character, in the way that all of the events that happen are accessories to build that main character. And so they doubled down on making sure that like the women that they introduced were people beyond their relationship with Bojack. And I think they did a really good job, because definitely they were like very, very strong, fleshed out, rich characters that could hold their own, and at some points were more interesting. Like, I would wish that they would cut to Diane or like cut to, Princess Carolyn and stuff. And I think that is interesting, because in this movie, they kind of do that, where Aster kind of just exists in her relevance to Ellie, which it's so in terms of the Bechtle test, it's like, okay, it passes and it's good because they're not talking about men, or for the most part, they're not talking about men. But Aster is kind of there's not much substance to her. She's kind of just Ellie's love interest. And if Ellie were a guy, it would be like, yo, that's sexist, da da da. And so I think it's kind of interesting, like the way, because if we were to say like, oh yeah, it passes, it's great, you know, these girls and stuff, but I kind of wanted to like bring it to the surface that there is that sort of, it can exist where women characters can be present in relation to a female protagonist and still not be strong female characters. Their existence is not inherently like that same rich and developed representation.
Like the only thing that makes her basically not a manic pixie dream girl to Ellie is the fact that she does make her own decision at the very end. Like that's about it.
Wait,
Other
what
than
decision?
that, the whole movie, she makes a decision to actually apply to art school.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
That's like, and like walk out of the church and pretty much like doesn't go back to the church after that. Like with her dad and everything, and she breaks up with what's his face? Trig.
Yeah.
And so like, and I guess she does make like one other choice, but it's very much like the quirky girl, like, oh, we're going to go and have a conversation type of a thing. Like when she finds Ellie at Paul's and like they go to the like hot spring. It might not be a hot spring, but whatever
it was like a hot spring.
source of water it was.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, you're right.
But they go to that thing and then they have their conversations there. Like, if she were a dude, if Ellie was a dude, then Aster would be considered a manic pixie dream girl. Like, she may not have the colored hair, but she's got the, like, quirky personality. Yeah. She's got the, oh, I'm interested in books. I'm, like, an outsider, even though I fit in kind of a thing. Like, that would be her trope.
Yeah.
Because I did like Aster's character. Like, I know she wasn't there a lot, but I liked how she challenged Ellie. And I thought that that was kind of like a neat relationship because it seemed that, like, I feel like a lot of times they'll have a main character that's often challenging perspectives and stuff. And I liked that, like, yes, Ellie did offer challenging perspectives, but every other character in the film, like her dad, Paul, and Aster, all kind of challenge her to open her own mind. And I guess, like, maybe I see myself a little bit in Ellie, whereas, like, I will be like, oh, yeah, like, I have strong opinions a lot of the times. But I really like having other people. And I will just sometimes sit down and be like, all right, how would I think about this from a completely different viewpoint? Like, I'll just go through a bunch of different perspectives. So I love in movies when you can kind of see that, like, every character offers a different perspective, like, to the movie for the main character. And yeah, like, at the same time, she theoretically, like, if Ellie was a man, Aster would be, like, a manic pixie dream girl, because oftentimes a manic pixie dream girl is, like, challenging, like, the main male character to, like, think about certain things and whatever. And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting that we bring it up, because I don't think I had ever thought about it, like, that hard until literally, like, just now.
I know, it was just a coincidence because I saw that quote and I was like, wow, that's a good fucking point. And it was cool that they had admitted to that, to their kind of, like, double, it was like a reverse double standard, because usually the double standard is, like, in favor of men, but they, like, were like, no, we love women, and then, like, did that. And I was like, that's kind of cool that they're, like, admitting that that's a thing that happens, because I think that, yeah, people will, like, do, you know, they'll kind of just, like, write a male character and then be like, I'll make it a woman. But it's like, those tropes, like, you can see them, you know, like, what is it? Like, kind of float to the surface and, like, you know, and they're so, like, ingrained in the history of film that it's almost easier, because if you, like, resort to those tropes, your audience is going to know what's going on. It's like, we're like, oh, you know, she's just a love interest, that like, we're able to, like, connect the dots quicker. But yeah, those are, like, you know, rooted in sexism and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
It's a really interesting thing to think about. I'm always glad that we included this segment, because it does really bring up a lot of just little things to think about when you watch film, and just, like, the things that we're used to as an audience seeing, and ways that maybe, like you and I, we aspire to be filmmakers. Like, we've made some short films. We aspire to like someday write and become filmmakers and make maybe like feature-length films and stuff like that. Like, these are all things that are going to be in the back of my head anywhere I go from like here on out, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's cool that like we can talk about it, and I hope that other people can listen to these conversations and also, you know, have a different perspective on things that they make after this.
Yeah.
So I really do. I like having this segment, especially at like the end of the podcast after we've gone through all of our things, to kind of just like tie it up, you know?
Yeah. Food for thought.
Yeah.
So what would you rate it?
Dang.
Okay, because I was getting pissed at myself about the fucking what is it called? Old Guard one.
The Old Guard?
Yeah. I think I'm gonna change it retrospectively. I'm gonna re-rate the Old Guard an 8, and I'm gonna rate this one a 7.
Okay. Because I think I also gave the Old Guard. I gave the Old Guard like a 9.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
9 or 9.5 or something
yeah,
like that.
A 7
so
was
I would
way
say
too
this
low.
one,
I don't know
like,
what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I rated it pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
I think I said 9.5 to be honest.
I think
or
so
like
too,
a
yeah,
9. I don't remember. But it was pretty high.
Yeah.
This one's also pretty high. Like, I do really love this film. It's not something that I really like would, I guess the only reason I would rate it as like an 8 would be because I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for like everyone to watch. Like,
Wow,
like the Old Guard, like
really
I can recommend to like,
An 8 is really high to not recommend it.
well, no, like I would still recommend it to people,
Okay,
but
okay.
it's not like like I wouldn't be like, oh, Dad, you should watch this movie. It's like really good because he's more of like an action guy, or like you don't like rom-coms. Like I wouldn't just recommend it to people that I know don't really like rom-coms that much.
Right.
Or like I would recommend it to people that are like into that kind of a, like movie, like thematically maybe, or they really like love stories or something like that, or like really like coming of age films. Like, yeah. But it, like in that genre, I would say is pretty high.
Wow.
So
okay,
yeah,
okay,
I give it
okay.
overall an 8 for my own reasons. But like in the genre of like coming of age rom-com type movies, like it's still really up there.
Okay, that's awesome.
It's a good one.
Did you have any movies you would like to recommend? I have 3.
She said that she also directed this movie called Saving Face, and I actually hadn't heard of it before reading that thing, and I like really want to watch it.
Oh my god,
so
that was
I would
the first one I was
recommend
going to
watching
recommend.
it maybe with me.
Dude, that was the first one I was going to recommend. I went and watched it. It's so fucking awesome. That I gave that one on Letterboxd. I gave it 5 stars, and it's like a comfort movie because it was just so like it's not about like kids. It's about like adults and stuff. And like my friend Jen watched it, and she wasn't a fan just because like it's kind of the same where like Saving Face is more kind of about her relationship with her mom, and then the girlfriend kind of takes a backseat again, but I like that one so much more than half of it. It's so good. It's so good.
Like I definitely want to watch it now. Like
it's really good. But it is like, I will say it's another, well, it came out in like 2004, so I don't really know what the queer like film scene was like back then, but it's kind of about like coming out of the closet, which now it's like that's played out. Like watching Happiest Season, it's like, girl, another one of these and shit. But back then, I don't know. I think it was like fantastic, and it was a nice little like window into like what queer films looked like back then. Or wait, what year was it? Not 2004. Maybe it was earlier. Oh no, 2004.
Okay.
Really good. I love that one.
I have to be honest, watching this film reminded me, and I don't know exactly why, because I really like the movie. It's a Christmas movie, technically, and it's a rom-com. I like rom-coms, okay?
It's valid. It's a rom-com.
It's written by a woman, and it's starring Kate Winslet and freaking Cameron Diaz. Why am I blanking on the name? Like, I love
Are
this
they gay?
movie. No.
Oh.
But
when did it come out? I'll look it up.
The Holiday. It's called The Holiday.
Oh, I've heard
like
of it.
it's one of those Christmas movies people like talk about a lot. Like they always talk about it like in contrast to Love Actually, which I don't really know why. Because Love Actually is like a love story with like all these people, but The Holiday is awkwardly written by a woman about these two women who go and they like they switch houses for like the holidays, and they just kind of like figure things out. But it's odd because they interact with each other a little bit, and both of them interact with other men. Like Jack Black's in this movie.
What?
And like, yeah, and like he actually does a great acting job in this movie too. Like, I don't know what it is, but there's just like certain thematic things I think were similar to this movie as far as like their ideas of like love and like different types of love and just that kind of like exploration of it, because there's like 3 core characters just like that all have their own experiences, and it's like their interaction with all of that. So, and it kind of ends again with like there's really no answer about love kind of a thing, but I always enjoy watching it because I enjoy watching movies that explore things like that. I'm always down to watch a movie where they explore love and it's not necessarily like purely just a romantic one,
right?
Because there is like more elements with these other characters that gets like talked about, and you do see a little bit more of like the female perspective when it does come to like romantic relationships, instead of it just being like male perspectives.
I feel.
Yeah. So I guess I would recommend that one.
Another early 2000s movie, 2005, that I would recommend. It's called Imagine Me and You. Have you heard of it?
I feel like I have, but like, I don't think I've seen it.
It's so good. Dude, talk about rom-com. I just saw this one recently and I cried like 3 times. And it's so rom-com. It's like, it's stupid. And like even like, because it has like a 30% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I would give it like a freaking 9 out of 10. Like, it's so good. Like, I finally understand like why people like rom-coms. And this one's about this girl on her wedding day. She meets like the florist, like the woman who did the flowers for her wedding, and they like have like a clique. And it's a, what is it? It's a British movie, I think. And she's kind of trying to figure out, she's like, why do I just feel this like attachment to this girl? They start hanging out, all this stuff. And she kind of has to figure out like what is going on. And like her husband is like a really cute, sweet character. And like he is kind of like, you know what, like I don't really know what's going on in our relationship and stuff like that. And it's like, it's not necessarily miscommunication because she herself doesn't really know what's going on in like having this attachment to another woman. But it was just so cute and beautiful. And like there's stupid scenes where she's like going to the airport and like trying to catch up with her. And it's just like great. I fucking loved it. It's directed by Ol Parker. I think his original name was Oliver Parker. So it's a guy, but it's a freaking awesome movie. It's really cute. And I would recommend Booksmart, directed by Olivia Wilde. Because I feel like that one is really similar to this movie in like the whole friendship thing and, you know, and the rom-comedy, whatever aspects
they
of
do
that.
They do their grand gestures, and I love it. Their grand gestures for each other, I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
No, I love that film. I would 100% recommend that one as well.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we're done now. We've talked about everything, a lot of things. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, for staying as long as you did, even if you only listened for like 5 minutes. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Continue, hopefully, to like recommend us films, things that you would like for us to either talk about, or even just if you think we should watch them, films that we would watch. But again, if we're going to review it for the podcast, it has to be written by, directed by, or starring a woman. You know, leave your comments, play FMF if you want. Continue on some of our conversations that we have. We would love to hear what you guys think. You know, extra points of views, things like, what did you think about the movie? Yeah, thanks so much again for listening. We love you guys. And have a great rest of your day or whatever time you're watching / listening to this. Bye.
Bye.